Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I get to do my very first cooking demonstration for you. I'm going to be cooking brown rice. It's a brown rice recipe I have. Oftentimes I call it wild rice, but it's actually a combination of both brown rice and wild rice. Very much like a box dinner of Uncle Ben's I used to eat growing up, but why brown rice? Brown rice has more nutrients in it. It has more fiber, more protein, more minerals. Brown rice has more because it's unrefined. When we refine grains like brown rice and whole wheat, we remove the bran and the germ, which have these nutrients. The bran and the germ also have fat, and fat is typically what spoils first in the shelf life of foods. When fat is exposed to light and air, it can oxidize, which means it's gone rancid. It'll smell old or musty, and it can take the flavor. It can take on flavors of things around it, like other things in your pantry. But once it's bad, we typically don't want to eat it. We started to refine grains to extend their shelf life both in your pantry and in the grocery store. Because we move the bran and the germ, you're also losing out on things like the naturally occurring fiber, the fats, the protein, and the minerals. White rice and refined grains are actually fortified. They're actually enriched. They put back into it the nutrients that were removed in the refining process. My wife and I have both brown rice and white rice in our house, but brown rice it just takes longer to cook. It takes almost an hour, whereas white rice takes about 10 to 12 minutes. Sometimes convenience wins, and when we have time constraints, we cook white rice. But if I have the time, I usually enjoy the heartiness, and I'll cook some brown rice. So two things before I even begin sharing cooking videos: fat and salt. Both of which I will do videos on later, but for now, my wife and I have been practicing a lower fat or no added oil diet for a few years. Refined fat and cooking oils are the most concentrated source of calories in the diet. When you fill up on them, you reach your total caloric intake rather quickly, which leaves less room for more nutrient-dense foods. For instance, this brown rice recipe. Fat also has some of the most deleterious effects on the cardiovascular system. I highly recommend reducing and eliminating oil in your diet when possible. As for salt, I consider salt like my final frontier. Even now, I'm still finding ways to reduce and eliminate added sodium in my diet because salt has been shown to have negative health effects on the cardiovascular system. My wife and I love cooking, and we like to make sure the food we cook, it tastes good. But grain recipes like bread and this brown rice recipe, they typically call for a bit of salt because when salt is diluted in water and absorbed into the recipe, it lends more of an even seasoning across the board. So if you're to have a standalone rice, or for instance, like when a bread maker makes bread, they want it to taste good, even if you eat it by itself. If you plan on adding more toppings to your rice, then feel free to cut back on how much salt you put in your rice recipe. I'll let you decide on what level of seasoning you like, but the bottom line is, if you can, reduce and eliminate sodium in the diet when possible. So, without further ado, here's my demonstration on how to cook brown rice. So we're going to talk about our ingredients here and how we combine them. So first off, I use black bean broth when I make my rice. So how do I get black bean broth? My wife and I are really accustomed to soaking beans overnight and then cooking them in a pressure cooker. These can be pinto beans, black beans, whichever beans you like to use, and for whatever purpose. So sure enough, we made black beans earlier this week, and we used our pressure cooker. We soaked the beans overnight, or at least 8 hours. Then all you have to do is put them in a pressure cooker and cook them for about 10 to 11 minutes, and voila! Not only you got cooked black beans, but then you got a pretty good quantity of black bean broth or whatever bean broth you have. It's a really good added source for fiber and antioxidants, particularly if you're going to make like a soup or a stew, or for instance, you're going to make some wild rice. Here we got our ingredients. We got our 5 cups of liquid. Our black beans earlier this week only yielded about 4 cups of black bean broth, so I have 1 extra cup here. 5 cups of liquid and 3 cups of rice. When I use rice, I use basically any sort of brown rice you can get from the store, your grocery store that sells large quantities of brown rice. And then, sure enough, some TJ's wild grain, some wild rice here. So I like to put them both together. The wild rice, you don't have to use very much of it, but it adds a nice sort of color, like a bicolor to the rice, kind of like your favorite box of Uncle whatever rice. And it offers a pretty good earthy flavor too. So in here I got 2.5 cups of brown rice and about 1/2 cup of that wild rice. And then spices, so cumin, onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. I find the cumin, it adds a little bit of earthiness, so because of this rice, we're going to use it for several applications, not only maybe a Mexi rice as a base for a Mexi bowl or something like that, but if you're going to make like an Asian style rice, definitely don't go too heavy on the cumin. In fact, the cumin just kind of adds a little bit of earthiness and it goes along well with the wild rice. So cumin's not a very good Asian style flavor, so don't go overboard when you add the cumin. So we have our 5 cups of liquid. We're going to bring that to a boil on the stovetop. And when I turn on the stovetop, I'm also going to turn on my oven. I'm going to get that to about 350 degrees. So here's the secret to perfectly cooked rice. Water can only reach a certain temperature on the stovetop. The maximum temperature water reaches is that of which it boils. What temperature does water boil at? I'll give you some time. No. If you said 100 degrees Celsius, you're right. And if you said 212 degrees Fahrenheit, you're also right. So once water reaches that temperature, it starts to boil, it evaporates off, and that's basically the maximum temperature you can get to cook this rice. Therefore, if you can bring it to a boil on the stovetop and then quickly cover it, transfer it in an oven-safe dishware, transfer it into the oven and finish it, you can get a more even cooking, and you can but you can reduce your cooking time. So more even cooking, reduced cooking time, and this is how restaurants do their rice too. If you ever go to a Mexi restaurant or any restaurant and they have like perfectly fluffy and al dente rice, it's because they're oven cooking it. They put it in large sheet pans, they usually cover it with foil so none of the moisture escapes, and that's how you get better, more evenly cooked rice. So that's the secret. At any one point you're bringing this water to a boil, feel free to season it. Just season it before it comes to a boil. That way the salt will dilute inside the broth. So start with some cumin. Just a little bit. I would say no more than a teaspoon. Probably not even a teaspoon. We got garlic powder. Don't go overboard, but if you like garlic, feel free. Onion powder. Some salt. Our broth is already seasoned, but I'm going to add a little bit more salt. I'd say about a teaspoon. And of course, black pepper. I know this is already pre-ground, but it comes in a pinch. I'm going to use it. So we got our broth here to a boil. It's got all the seasonings mixed in it. I'm going to add this rice. Give it a few stirs. Make sure all that wild rice is nicely integrated inside there, so it looks like a good even color. Give it about another 10-20 seconds, bring it back to a complete boil, cover it, we're going to put it in the oven. Alright, we're going to finish it 50-55 minutes. So if you got other things you need to do right now, if you're prepping a full meal, now you get to take a break. Alrighty, so it's been 55 minutes. It's been a long wait, but rice is ready. We're going to pull it out of the oven. Let's look at it. It's going to look great. Alright, so extremely hot, careful for the steam, and obviously it's oven safe bakeware, and make sure you use some mitts if you're gonna take that lid off. So here we go. It's done. I can hear it. You can come in and have a look.
There's even a few leftover black beans from the broth, but I don't mind. You can see the dark color. The broth definitely gave it a lot of nice color. Let's give it a little fluff here. Oh man, you can see just how al dente it is. It's perfectly fluffed. The rice separates. It's not overdone, not underdone. I mean, this is just perfect. So let's go on ahead and there you go. Black, brown rice, wild rice with black bean broth. It smells good. It kind of has some of the black bean smell to it, but you know, it's great to just eat by itself. My favorite application is making either some sort of Mexi base dish out of this. You know, you can use this as like an enchilada filling, a burrito filling. You can use it as a burrito bowl, or just, you know, load up either tomatoes, freshly chopped lettuce, you know, some sort of protein, whatever you want on there, guacamole, sour creams, etc. Easy Mexi bowl, and of course it can also double as an Asian bowl. So if you have some microwavable veggies, some broccoli, fresh chopped red cabbage, peanuts, peanut sauce, however you want to do it, this has the application of both. So I'll let it cool down a little bit. I'm going to give it a little taste here. I know it's going to be great. Really good. Very well seasoned, which is good. So definitely flavorful, and I don't know, maybe this could be like a good side dish for perhaps like some portobello steaks. So stay tuned. I'll be showing a video directly after this on how to make some really good portobello mushroom steaks, which would go really well with a side of wild rice. Stay tuned.